You know that moment when your entire world shifts on its axis and you're not even sure what caused it? That was me, Ethan Chen, 3 months ago, sitting in our perfectly organized suburban Denver kitchen, watching my wife Sarah text someone at 11:47 p.m. with a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in years. 8 years of marriage, 8 years of building what I thought was our dream life together. Sarah and I met in college, and I fell hard for her ambition, her drive to succeed in marketing. I was the steady one, the software engineer who believed in saving for the future, in building something solid. She was the spark, the one who pushed us to buy the house in Highlands Ranch, who insisted on the granite countertops and the SUV were still paying off. But something had changed, and I couldn't pinpoint when it started. "Who's texting so late?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual as I loaded the dishwasher. Sarah's thumb moved lightning fast across her screen before she flipped the phone face down. "Just Emma. She's having drama with her boyfriend again." Her sister Emma, always the convenient excuse. I nodded, but something cold settled in my stomach. Sarah used to show me Emma's texts, used to roll her eyes and read the dramatic messages out loud. When had that stopped? The changes had been subtle at first. New clothes that seemed too expensive for someone concerned about our mortgage payments. Late nights at the office that turned into a pattern. The way she'd started showering immediately when she got home, claiming she needed to wash off the day. The sudden interest in yoga classes that she never talked about afterward. And then there was her phone. Sarah had always been attached to her device. It was part of her job in marketing. But now she guarded it like state secrets, face down on restaurant tables, taken with her to the bathroom, charging on her nightstand instead of the kitchen counter where it used to live. "I think I'm going to head to bed early tonight," I said, testing something. "Long day tomorrow with the software deployment." She didn't look up from her phone, which had buzzed again. This was the woman who used to ask detailed questions about my work projects, who'd stay up late helping me debug code even though she didn't understand programming. Now I felt like I was talking to a roommate who tolerated my presence. I went upstairs and pretended to fall asleep, but I could hear her moving around downstairs for another hour. The soft ping of notifications, the creak of the kitchen chair, the gentle sound of her laughing at something on her screen. When had I become the person she stayed up to avoid? The next morning, Sarah was already gone when I woke up. A note on the coffee maker. "Early meeting. Don't wait up tonight. Team dinner." Her handwriting was rushed, almost guilty looking. I called my best friend Jake on my drive to work. "Dude, you sound paranoid," Jake said, but I could hear the concern in his voice. "When's the last time you two went on a date? Maybe she's just stressed about work." "It's not stress, Jake. It's distance. Like she's already checked out of our marriage but hasn't told me yet. Look, Ethan, I love you like a brother, but you've always been the overthinker. Remember when you were convinced your manager was going to fire you and he ended up promoting you? But this felt different. This wasn't my anxiety talking. This was my gut, honed by 8 years of knowing Sarah's patterns, screaming that something was fundamentally wrong. That evening, I decided to surprise her at work. I picked up Thai food from her favorite place and drove to her office building downtown. The security guard knew me. I'd done this before, back when we were happy. "She left about an hour ago," he said, "with that tall guy from marketing. They seem to be in good mood." My blood turned to ice water. "Tall guy?" "Yeah, the VP. Good-looking fellow. Always wear those expensive suits." Marcus Hale. I knew the name from Sarah's work stories, but she'd never mentioned spending after-hours time with him, certainly not while telling me she'd be at a team dinner. I drove home with the Thai food growing cold in the passenger seat, my mind racing. There had to be an explanation. Maybe the team dinner was at a restaurant and Marcus had offered her a ride. Maybe, but when Sarah came home at 10:30 p.m., her hair was a little messed up, and she had that same secretive smile from the night before. "How was dinner?" I asked. "It was good. Productive,"
We talked about the Q4 campaign strategy. She was already heading for the stairs. I'm exhausted. Going to shower. Another shower. Another barrier between us. As I listened to the water running upstairs, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to be the clueless husband who discovers his wife's affair through accidentally seeing a text message or finding receipts. If Sarah was betraying 8 years of marriage, 8 years of building a life together, I was going to know exactly what I was dealing with. I opened my laptop and started a document titled Observations. Date, time, Sarah's claims versus reality. The late nights that didn't match her calendar. The new clothes I'd never seen her buy. The way she'd started working out more but never talked about her progress. The way she'd stopped saying, "I love you," when she left for work. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. "Everything okay? You seemed pretty wound up earlier." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "Just paying attention for the first time in months." Because that's what this was. I've been sleepwalking through my own marriage, trusting completely, while Sarah had apparently been building a separate life. But I was awake now, and I was going to find out exactly what that life looked like. The shower upstairs turned off, and I heard Sarah's voice, muffled but audible. "I know, but I can't talk now. Tomorrow, okay?" She was on the phone, in the bathroom, at 11 p.m. I closed my laptop and headed upstairs, my heart hammering against my ribs. When I walked into our bedroom, Sarah was already under the covers, her phone charging on her nightstand, her back turned to me. "Good night," I said softly. She didn't respond, but I could tell by her breathing that she wasn't asleep. Tomorrow, I decided, I would start paying attention very closely to the woman I had married. And if Sarah Chen was betraying everything we'd built together, I was going to be ready for whatever came next.
The next 2 weeks turned me into someone I barely recognized. A detective in my own home, cataloging evidence of my wife's deception with the same methodical approach I use to debug software. Every inconsistency, every lie, every moment of distance got documented in my encrypted file. "You're scaring me a little bit," Jake said over beers at our usual Friday spot. "This level of surveillance isn't healthy, man." I took a long drink before answering. "You know what's not healthy? Living with someone who's actively lying to your face every single day." Because that's what it had become. Sarah's team dinners happened 3 times that week. But when I casually asked about her coworker Michelle's new baby, Sarah looked confused. "Michelle doesn't have a baby," she said, then caught herself. "Oh, you mean Jessica? Yeah, cute kid." Except Jessica from her team had been on maternity leave for 6 months. I remembered Sarah complaining about covering her workload. These weren't innocent mistakes. They were the slip-ups of someone maintaining multiple versions of reality. "So, what's your endgame here?" Jake pressed. "Let's say you're right, and she's having an affair. Then what?" I'd been thinking about that question for days. The old me, the trusting, conflict-avoidant Ethan, would have confronted her immediately, probably crying, begging to know what I'd done wrong. But watching Sarah lie so effortlessly to my face had awakened something colder, more strategic. Then I make sure I'm not the one who gets screwed over when this all comes out. Jake studied my face. "You've changed. You know that." "Good. The old me was an idiot who thought love was enough to keep someone faithful." That night, I implemented phase 2 of my investigation. While Sarah was in her marathon post-work shower, I used her laptop, password still Ethan Sarah 2016 from our wedding year, and found exactly what I was looking for in her browser history. Restaurant reservations for 2 at places we'd never been together. Google searches for how to know if you're in love with someone else. A deleted email thread that I recovered from her trash folder, filled with messages to someone saved in her contacts as M.H. Marcus Hale. My hands shook
as I read their exchange from 3 days earlier. Sarah, last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. Marcus, I'm all I think about in these boring board meetings. When can I see you again? Sarah, Ethan's working late tomorrow, my place. Marcus, I'll bring that wine you liked. Can't wait to taste you again. I had to grip the edge of the desk to keep from throwing the laptop across the room. My wife, the woman who still wore her wedding ring, who still kissed me goodbye in the morning, was planning to bring her lover into our home, into the bed we shared. But instead of confronting her, I did something that surprised even me. I took screenshots of everything and forwarded them to a secure email account I'd created. Then, I carefully deleted the evidence of my snooping and closed the laptop. When Sarah emerged from the bathroom in her terry-cloth robe, I was calmly reading a book in bed. "How was your day?" she asked. The same question she'd been asking for 8 years, now loaded with new meaning. "Good, productive," I said, echoing her standard response. "How about yours?" "Busy. Marcus has us working on this huge presentation for next week." She said his name so casually, like it meant nothing. "Sounds stressful?" "It is. I might need to work late again tomorrow to finish it." I nodded sympathetically. "Whatever you need to do." She smiled, actually smiled at my understanding response. The woman was planning to cheat on me in our home, and she was smiling at how supportive I was being about it. That's when I knew I wasn't dealing with someone who'd made a mistake or fallen into temptation. This was calculated, deliberate. Sarah had looked at our 8-year marriage, weighed it against whatever Marcus Hale was offering, and chosen him. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to downtown Denver, to the law offices of Rodriguez and Associates. I'd researched family law attorneys, and Lisa Rodriguez had the reputation I needed: smart, aggressive, and known for protecting their clients' assets. "Mr. Chen," Lisa said, settling behind her desk with a coffee that probably cost more than my lunch, "you mentioned on the phone that you suspect your wife is having an affair." "I don't suspect it anymore. I know it." I handed her a folder with printed copies of everything I'd found. "I need to know what my options are before she realizes I know." Her eyebrows rose as she read through the evidence. "This is impressive," she said. "Most people come to me after confronting their spouse when half their assets have already been hidden or spent." She looked up at me with what might have been respect. "You're thinking strategically." "I'm thinking about survival. Sarah makes good money, but we've built everything together: the house, our savings, our investments. If she's been planning an exit strategy, I need one too." "Smart man. Colorado is no-fault divorce, but adultery can still impact asset division, especially if marital funds were used to support the affair." Lisa leaned back in her chair. "Tell me about your finances." I laid out everything: joint accounts, the mortgage, Sarah's 401k, my stock options from work, our entire financial life, built on the assumption that we were building toward the same future. "Here's what we're going to do," Lisa said. "You're going to continue gathering evidence, but you're also going to start protecting yourself. Open a separate account and start redirecting your direct deposit. Document everything she spends. If she's using marital money to wine and dine her boyfriend, we need records." "What about confronting her?" "Not yet. Right now she thinks she's in control of the narrative. She's planning her exit on her timeline, probably waiting until after her affair runs its course or until she's secured her next situation. The longer we let her think she's winning, the more rope she gives us to hang her with."
Month 4 of my investigation brought revelations that made Sarah's affair look like amateur hour compared to the financial betrayal I was about to uncover. What started as documenting late nights and suspicious texts had evolved into something much darker, a complete picture of how thoroughly my wife had been planning to destroy our life together. Holy shit, Ethan! Jake stared at the bank statements spread across my kitchen table. She's been siphoning money for 6 months? I nodded grimly, pointing to the highlighted transactions. Small amounts at first. 500 here, 1,000 there, always from our joint savings, always on days when she claimed to be working late with Marcus. The pattern was obvious when she knew what to look for. Sarah would transfer money from our shared account to her personal checking, then immediately withdraw cash. No digital trail, no credit card records, just cold, hard currency that could be spent on hotel rooms, expensive dinners, and weekend getaways that she'd been taking while telling me she was at marketing conferences. How much total? $18,000. The number still made me feel sick. Money we were saving for the kitchen renovation. Money I thought was going toward our future. But the financial theft was just the beginning. Lisa Rodriguez had taught me to think like a prosecutor, and when you approached Sarah's behavior with that mindset, a terrifying picture emerged. She's been planning this for months, I told Jake. The money transfer started the same week she began working late with Marcus. She's not just having an affair, she's funding an exit strategy. I showed him the credit card statements I'd finally gotten access to through our joint account. Charges at lingerie stores I'd never heard of, a weekend at the Broadmoor Resort in Colorado Springs during a time when Sarah claimed to be visiting her sick aunt in Phoenix, jewelry purchases that had never made it home to our house. She's living a completely separate life with him, I said, and using our money to do it. Jake ran his hair through his hair. Dude, this is criminal, like actual theft. I said, Lisa says proving criminal intent is harder than you'd think. Sarah's name is on all our accounts. Technically, she has legal access to everything. I closed the laptop containing my evidence files, but it'll definitely help in divorce proceedings. The divorce I was now certain was coming, whether I initiated it or Sarah did. That's when Jake asked the question I'd been dreading. So, when are you going to confront her? Soon. Lisa wants me to get through one more month of documentation, especially if we can catch them together somewhere public. But honestly, I looked around our kitchen, at the breakfast bar where Sarah and I used to sit with coffee and plan our weekends, at the refrigerator covered with photos from happier times. I'm getting tired of living in this lie. The constant pretending was wearing me down in ways I hadn't expected. Kissing Sarah goodbye every morning, knowing she was probably texting Marcus before she even got to work. Making dinner reservations for our anniversary next month while she spent our savings on someone else. Listening to her complain about work stress when I knew the only thing stressing her was managing 2 relationships. You've changed, man, Jake said quietly. I mean, I get why, but you're not the same guy anymore. He was right. The old Ethan would have been destroyed by what I'd discovered. Hell, the old Ethan never would have had the stomach to investigate this thoroughly. But watching someone you love systematically betray everything you'd built together changes you at a molecular level. It strips away illusions about trust, about love, about the basic human decency you think you can expect from the person who promised to be your partner for life. That night, I decided to test just how deep Sarah's deception ran. I've been thinking, I said over dinner, Chinese takeout that we ate while she scrolled through her phone. Maybe we should start trying for a baby. Sarah's chopsticks froze halfway to her mouth. For just a moment, I saw something like panic flash across her face before she recovered. Oh, that's a big conversation. Maybe we should focus on getting the house renovated first. The house renovation she'd been secretly defunding for months. We could do both. I mean, we're not getting any older, and
I know your mom keeps asking about grandkids. She needs to mind her own business. And honestly, Ethan, I'm not sure I'm ready for that kind of responsibility yet. Yet. Like having a baby was something she might want to do eventually, just not with me. Not in this life she was already planning to leave behind. Of course, just a thought. I kept my voice light, casual, no pressure. But inside, another piece of my heart crystallized into something harder and colder. Sarah wasn't just betraying our marriage. She was actively protecting her affair partner from any complications that might arise from her current life. She'd rather string me along indefinitely than risk Marcus Hale having to deal with the messy reality of her being married. 2 days later, I followed her. I know how that sounds, like I'd become some kind of stalker. But after months of living with someone who lied about everything from where she ate lunch to who she spent her evenings with, I needed to see the truth with my own eyes. Sarah had claimed another team dinner, this one supposedly at the new steakhouse downtown. Instead, I watched her park outside Marcus Hale's apartment complex in Cherry Creek, one of the most expensive areas in Denver. She had a key. She let herself in like she belonged there. I sat in my car across the street for 2 hours, watching the lights in what I assumed was his apartment, imagining my wife in there with him, laughing, touching, probably making plans for their future together while I waited at home like an idiot. When Sarah finally emerged at 10 p.m., her hair was down and messy, her lipstick gone. She looked radiant in a way she hadn't looked with me in months. Marcus followed her out, pressing her against her car for a long, passionate kiss that my stomach turned. That's when I knew I was done gathering evidence. I had enough to prove adultery, financial betrayal, and systematic deception, but more importantly, I'd seen enough to kill whatever part of me had still hoped this was all some terrible misunderstanding. Sarah Chen had made her choice. She'd chosen Marcus Hale over 8 years of marriage, over our shared home, over the man who loved her unconditionally since college. She'd chosen to steal from our future, to fund her affair, to lie to my face every day, to turn our marriage into a convenient cover story while she built a new life with someone else. Now it was my turn to choose. The next morning, I called Lisa Rodriguez. "It's time," I said. "I want to file for divorce." "Are you sure you're ready?" "Once we start this process, there's no going back to the way things were." I thought about Sarah humming in the shower that morning, probably thinking about Marcus. I thought about our empty savings account and her secret apartment key. I thought about the baby conversation and the way she looked at me like I was an obstacle to overcome. There's no going back anyway. She made sure of that. All right then. Let's destroy her. And for the first time in months, I smiled.
The family barbecue at Sarah's parents' house was supposed to be a celebration of her promotion to senior marketing manager, a promotion I'd only learned about when her sister Emma mentioned it in passing. Apparently, Sarah had been celebrating that milestone with Marcus instead of her husband. "Congratulations on the promotion," I said to Sarah as we pulled into her parents' driveway. "Funny that you forgot to mention it." She had the grace to look embarrassed. "It's not official yet. I didn't want to jinx it." Another lie in an endless string of lies. I'd confirmed through LinkedIn that her promotion had been announced company-wide 3 days earlier, but I just smiled and carried the potato salad we'd bought at King Soopers, the same store where Sarah used to insist on making everything from scratch because family gatherings deserve homemade food. The backyard was full of people I'd known for 8 years. Sarah's parents, who still asked about our plans for grandchildren. Her Uncle Mike, who always wanted to talk about the Broncos. Her cousins and their kids running around the pool. People who saw us as a unit, who had no idea that one half of that unit was actively planning her escape. "Ethan," Sarah's mom, Patricia, pulled me into a hug that smelled like sunscreen and barbecue sauce. "How's work going? Sarah says you're doing something very important with computers."
Software development is going well, thanks. I glanced at Sarah, who was already scanning the crowd, probably checking her phone for messages from Marcus. We're launching a new platform next month. That's wonderful! You two must be so excited about Sarah's promotion, too. She'll be making such good money now. Money she'd probably be spending on Marcus instead of our shared future, but I kept that observation to myself. What I didn't know was that Sarah had been planning something, too. Something she'd been working up the courage to do for weeks, according to the text messages I'd intercepted between her and Marcus. Marcus, are you going to tell him today? Sarah, I think so. My whole family will be there. It might be easier with witnesses. Whatever you need, babe. I'll be thinking about you. Sarah, I love you. Those 3 words she hadn't said to me in months, sent to another man while she was getting ready for her family barbecue. The moment came during dessert, when everyone was gathered around the patio table, relaxed and happy from good food and cold beer. Sarah stood up suddenly, her hands shaking slightly as she cleared her throat. Actually, everyone, I have something I need to say. Her voice carried across the conversations, bringing the table to attention. Something important. I knew. Somehow I knew exactly what was coming. After months of watching her lie and deceive and steal from our marriage, I could read the signs. The way she avoided eye contact with me. The way she'd positioned herself near the house like she might need to make a quick escape. The way her sister Emma was already looking concerned. Ethan and I... She paused, took a deep breath. Our marriage isn't working anymore. We've grown apart, and I think it's time we both admitted that we want different things. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia's fork clattered against her plate. Uncle Mike stopped mid-chew of his apple pie. The kids kept playing in the pool, oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated their family gathering. She continued, her voice getting stronger as she spoke. I've been doing a lot of soul-searching lately, and I've realized that I'm not happy. I haven't been happy for a long time, and it's not fair to either of us to keep pretending otherwise. She was good. I had to give her that. She'd managed to make our divorce sound like a mutual realization instead of what it actually was, the natural conclusion of months of adultery and financial betrayal. She was rewriting our story in real time, painting herself as the brave one who was willing to face hard truths. Sarah, honey, her father said carefully, have you two tried counseling? Marriage goes through rough patches, but we're past that, Dad. She finally looked at me, and I saw something like pity in her eyes. I'm sorry, Ethan. I know this isn't easy, but I can't keep living a lie. A lie. She was calling our marriage a lie, while she'd been lying every day for months. That's when I did something that surprised everyone at that table, including myself. I smiled. Not a sad smile, not a bitter smile, but a genuine expression of amusement that made Sarah take a step back. You know what, Sarah? I said, my voice calm and conversational. You're absolutely right. The table looked between us like they were watching a tennis match. Sarah's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. What? You're right that one of us has been living a lie. You're right that it's time to stop pretending. I stood up slowly, brushing pie crumbs off my jeans. I'm just curious, when exactly did you plan to mention Marcus Hale? The color drained from Sarah's face so quickly I thought she might faint. Emma gasped. Patricia's hand flew to her chest. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, but her voice cracked on the words. Marcus Hale, your boss. Senior VP of Marketing, 41 years old, lives in Cherry Creek, drives a black BMW. I pulled out my phone and opened the photo gallery I'd prepared for this moment. $18,000, Sarah. That's how much you've stolen from our savings account to fund your affair. Money we were supposed to use to renovate our kitchen. Money I thought was going toward our future. But I guess our future wasn't as appealing as Marcus's apartment. Ethan, Patricia stood up, horrified. But I wasn't done. 8 months of rage and betrayal and humiliation were pouring out of me, and Sarah's family was going to hear every word. $18,000, Sarah. That's how much you've stolen from our savings account to fund your affair. Money we were supposed to use to renovate our kitchen. Money I thought was going toward our future. But I guess our future wasn't as appealing as Marcus's apartment. Sarah was backing toward the house now, tears streaming down her face. You went through my accounts? You've been spying on me? I've been protecting myself from someone who's been systematically lying to me for months. I turned to address her family, who were staring at us in shock. She's had a key to his apartment since March. She told me she was at marketing conferences while she was actually spending weekends at the Broadmoor with him. She's been using our credit cards to buy lingerie for another man. Stop, Sarah whispered. Please stop. Why? Because you wanted to control the narrative? Because you thought you could paint me as the problem while you rode off into the sunset with your rich boyfriend? I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my own ears. Sorry, sweetheart. I'm not going to be the clueless husband who gets blindsided by divorce papers while you and Marcus start your new life with our money. Emma was the first to speak, her voice small and shocked. Sarah, is this true? Sarah looked around the table at her family, people who'd loved and supported her for 32 years, and I watched her realize that her carefully crafted victim narrative had just imploded. She couldn't deny the evidence, couldn't claim she was the injured party, couldn't make this anyone's fault but her own. It's complicated, she said weakly. No, it's really not. I put my phone away and looked at my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, with something approaching pity. You made a choice, Sarah. You chose Marcus over our marriage, his money over our future, lying over honesty. And now, you get to live with the consequences of that choice. I turned to Patricia and Harold, Sarah's parents, who had welcomed me into their family 8 years ago, were now watching their daughter's marriage collapse in real time. Thank you for including me in your family, I said sincerely. I'm sorry it had to end this way. Then I walked away, leaving Sarah standing in her parents' backyard, surrounded by the wreckage of the life she'd destroyed, finally forced to face the truth of what she'd done. Behind me, I could hear Emma's voice, sharp with betrayal. How could you do this to him? How could you do this to all of us? But I didn't look back. I had a lawyer to call and a new life to start building, one where I wouldn't have to wonder if the person sleeping next to me was planning my destruction. The war was just beginning, but for the first time in months, I was the one with the advantage.
The divorce proceedings that followed were a masterclass in how thoroughly someone can destroy their own life when they underestimate their opponent. Sarah had spent months planning her exit strategy, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed I would remain the passive, trusting husband who'd roll over and let her take whatever she wanted. Your Honor, Lisa Rodriguez addressed the judge with the confidence of someone holding a royal flush. Mrs. Chen systematically depleted the marital savings account to fund an extramarital affair, spending over $18,000 of joint assets on hotel rooms, expensive dinners, and gifts for her paramour. I watched Sarah's lawyer, a young associate who clearly wasn't prepared for the mountain of evidence we'd compiled, shuffle through papers desperately. Sarah herself sat rigid in her chair, no longer the confident woman who'd announced our divorce at her family barbecue. The past 3 months had aged her in ways that expensive makeup couldn't hide. Furthermore, Lisa continued, Mrs. Chen used marital credit cards to purchase intimate apparel and jewelry that never entered the marital home, indicating these items were intended for her affair partner. We have documentation of her accessing Mr. Hale's apartment, including security footage from his building. That security footage was Jake's idea. If she has a key to his place, building management will have records, he'd said. He was right. Marcus lived in one of those luxury high-rises with cameras everywhere, and their security company had been very cooperative once Lisa explained the situation. The footage was damning. Sarah entering Marcus's building multiple times per week, sometimes staying overnight, always on days when she'd told me she was working late or attending marketing events. Your Honor, Sarah's lawyer stood up. My client acknowledges that the marriage deteriorated, but she maintains that both parties contributed to its breakdown. By stealing $18,000, Judge Martinez raised an eyebrow. Mr. Chen's financial records show consistent contributions to the marital assets, while Mrs. Chen systematically depleted them. This isn't marriage counseling, counselor. This is asset division, and theft is theft. I felt a grim satisfaction watching Sarah's face crumble. For months, she'd controlled every aspect of our relationship. When she came home, what she told me, how she spent our money. Now she was learning what it felt like to have no control at all. But the real devastation had started weeks before we ever entered that courtroom. The day after the family barbecue, Sarah's sister Emma had called me. "I can't stop thinking about what happened yesterday," Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. "I knew Sarah was acting strange lately, but I thought it was work stress. I never imagined." "I'm sorry you had to find out that way," I said sincerely. "I know how much you look up to her." "I did, past tense." Emma's voice hardened. "What she did to you, what she did to our family, it's unforgivable. Using our parents' barbecue to ambush you with divorce papers while she's been cheating and stealing, that's not the sister I thought I knew." Emma's loyalty shift had been the first domino to fall. Sarah's own family had turned against her once they understood the scope of her betrayal. Her parents, devastated by the public humiliation at their barbecue, had asked her not to bring Marcus around, a request that had apparently caused their first major fight. According to Emma, who'd become an unexpected source of intelligence, Marcus hadn't taken well to being exposed as a homewrecker. He told her that he never signed up for this kind of drama, Emma reported during one of our coffee meetings. Apparently, dating a married woman was exciting when it was secret, but being known as the guy who destroyed an 8-year marriage is less appealing. The second domino fell when Marcus's own company learned about the affair. Someone, and I had my suspicions about who, had sent an anonymous email to HR detailing the relationship between a senior VP and his direct report. Corporate policies about fraternization are strict, especially when they involve supervisors and subordinates. "They're conducting a full investigation," Emma told me gleefully. "Sarah's terrified she's going to lose her job, and Marcus is already talking about re-evaluating their relationship to protect his career." The irony was perfect. Sarah had blown up her marriage for a man who was now distancing himself from her to save his own skin. But the third domino was the most satisfying of all. "I have news," Lisa told me over the phone 2 weeks before our court date. "Marcus Hale's wife filed for divorce yesterday." I nearly dropped the phone. His wife? "Apparently, your wife isn't the first subordinate he's seduced. Mrs. Hale hired a private investigator 6 months ago and has been building her own case. She's claiming adultery and is going after half of everything, including his stock options and pension." Sarah thought she was trading up, leaving a stable but boring software engineer for a wealthy, powerful executive. Instead, she'd gotten involved with a serial cheater who was about to lose half of his assets to his own betrayed spouse. "There's more," Lisa continued. "Mrs. Hale's lawyer contacted me. They want to coordinate our cases to maximize the damage to both cheaters. Apparently, Marcus used company funds for some of his affairs, including hotel rooms that he expensed as business meetings." The web of deception was unraveling faster than Sarah could control it. Her affair partner was facing financial ruin and a corporate investigation. Her family had disowned her behavior. Her job was in jeopardy due to the HR investigation. And now she was sitting in divorce court watching me walk away with the majority of our assets due to her own financial misconduct. In light of Mrs. Chen's systematic depletion of marital assets, I'm awarding Mr. Chen 65% of all marital property, including the family home. Mrs. Chen will be responsible for repaying the $18,000 she removed from joint savings plus interest. Sarah's sharp intake of breath was audible across the courtroom. She'd gone from spending a comfortable new life with Marcus to facing financial devastation and social exile. As we left the courthouse, Lisa pulled me aside.
I've seen a lot of divorces, but I've never seen someone self-destruct this thoroughly. Your ex-wife managed to lose her marriage, her family, her boyfriend, potentially her job, and now most of her assets. It takes a special kind of talent." I looked back at Sarah, who was standing on the courthouse steps talking urgently on her phone. Probably to Marcus, though I doubted he was answering her calls anymore. She made her choices, every single one of them. The affair, the lies, the stealing, ambushing me at her family barbecue. She thought she was so smart, playing all these angles, but she never considered what would happen when the truth came out. 6 months later, I was settled in my new apartment, a sleek downtown loft that I'd bought with my share of our house sale. Jake helped me move the last box of books. "So what's the final tally?" he asked, cracking open a beer to celebrate. I pulled out my phone and showed him the news article I'd bookmarked. "Local marketing executive terminated following ethics investigation." Sarah lost her job last month. Marcus got demoted and transferred to their Phoenix office. Apparently, his wife's divorce settlement cleaned him out so thoroughly that he couldn't afford to quit. And according to Emma, Sarah's living in a studio apartment in Aurora and working as a freelance marketing consultant. Damn, from senior marketing manager to freelance consultant in under a year? It gets better. Emma says Marcus's wife got everything: the house, the cars, half of his retirement accounts. He's basically starting over at 41 with a damaged reputation and a demotion on his record. Jake shook his head in amazement. And Sarah? I thought about the woman I'd married 8 years ago, the ambitious marketing professional who'd pushed us to buy a house in the suburbs and plan for the future. She'd traded all of that: our home, our savings, our shared history, the respect of our family, for a few months with a man who'd abandoned her the moment their affair became inconvenient. Sarah got exactly what she deserved: the consequences of her choices. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Ethan, it's Sarah. I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted to say I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I realize what I threw away. I was stupid and selfish, and I destroyed the best thing in my life. I hope someday you can forgive me." I showed the message to Jake, who read it and laughed. "Are you going to respond?" I deleted the message without replying and put my phone away. There's nothing left to say. She made her choices, and now she gets to live with them. Forever. Outside my new apartment window, downtown Denver stretched out in all directions, full of possibilities and new beginnings. I'd rebuilt my life from the ground up, stronger and smarter than before. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to protect myself, to fight for what I deserved. Sarah had taught me that love without respect is worthless, that trust without verification is dangerous, and that sometimes the person you think you know best is the one capable of the deepest betrayal. But she'd also taught me that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined, more resilient than I'd given myself credit for, and fully capable of building something better from the ashes of what she had destroyed. The old Ethan would have been devastated by her text message, probably would have called her back, might even have considered reconciliation. The new Ethan just smiled and opened another beer with his best friend, celebrating the life he'd built without her. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well.